Welcome to Tales That Terrify, the podcast that turns your deepest fears into chilling reality. Every week, we bring you fresh, unsettling stories designed to haunt your imagination. From whispers in the dark to the horrors just beyond your sight, these tales will leave you questioning what lurks in the shadows. Want more nightmares? Dare to explore our YouTube channel for even more spine-tingling stories. Now dim the lights, get comfortable, and prepare for this week's descent into terror. The auction house was a dim labyrinth of forgotten relics and dubious treasures. Dust motes drifted lazily through weak shafts of light filtering past grimy windows, illuminating chipped porcelain dolls with vacant eyes and portraits of stern-faced strangers whose stories had long since faded into oblivion. I, Evan, a collector of the peculiar and the unsettling, felt a familiar thrill course through me as my gaze settled on a heavy wooden chest, tucked away in a shadowed corner. It was unlike anything else in the room. While the other artifacts murmured of faded elegance or mundane history, this box hummed with a palpable, almost malevolent energy. The dark wood was scarred and worn, its brass fittings tarnished and dull with age, yet it possessed a strange gravity, a silent, grim magnetism that outshone the cracked teacups and moth-eaten tapestries surrounding it. The auctioneer, a gaunt man whose eyes seemed to carry the weight of centuries, leaned in with a conspiratorial air as I examined the chest. "Ah, Evan," he rasped, his voice like dry leaves in the wind. "You've an eye for the unique. This piece, it has a history. Belonged to a physician, they say. But not of the living, mind you." He chuckled, a brittle, unsettling sound. "A physician of the damned," some whispered. He did not mend life but other matters. Far from deterring me, his words stoked the fire of my morbid curiosity. I had a weakness for objects with stories, especially those steeped in shadow. I could almost feel the weight of the secrets this box might yield, the echoes of forgotten, sinister practices. Against my better judgment, I bid. Then bid again. One by one, the other bidders faded away as if they too felt the box's dark pull, and feared it was mine. Back at my secluded cottage, nestled deep in the whispering woods, I set the heavy chest atop my antique oak table. The storm that had loomed all day finally broke, the wind howling like a chorus of banshees, rain lashing the windows with feral intensity. The air in the room felt charged, thick with an unseen pressure. With a steadying breath, I unfastened the tarnished brass clasps. The lid creaked open, revealing a velvet-lined interior, the fabric faded and blotched with stains disturbingly reminiscent of dried blood. A chill wafted out, carrying a faint, metallic scent. The contents were grotesque. Arranged with chilling precision were objects that spoke of twisted devotion and unspeakable purpose. In the top compartment, two crucifixes lay side by side. One, carved from a wood so dark it seemed to swallow the light, its edges sharp and unnerving. The other, a sickly verdigris green, its corroded metal resembling something diseased. Between them rested a silver crucifix, its emaciated Christ figure stretched in silent agony. Beside these distorted symbols of faith were vials and tubes filled with unsettling substances. Some contained viscous, opaque fluids that shimmered with an unnatural glow. Others held what appeared to be ground bone, their texture gritty and grotesque. Small, stoppered tubes contained dried herbs that exuded a faint, acrid odor. A shudder of morbid fascination coursed through me. This was no mere antique. It was a relic of madness, a testament to a mind enthralled by darkness. Lifting the tray, I revealed the lower compartment and with it, the true horror of the collection. A flintlock pistol, its metalwork intricately etched with grotesque, demonic figures, lay beside a dagger of cruel design. The silver hilt was icy to the touch, the blade gleaming hungrily in the dim light. A heavy, brass-bound book, its leather cracked and yellowed with age, rested alongside them. Its pages were filled with indecipherable script and macabre illustrations, whispering secrets in a language my conscious mind could not grasp, but my soul recognized with instinctive dread. And then, in the bottom drawer, I found what truly chilled me to the bone. Laid out with dreadful care were lengths of sharpened wood, meticulously carved to cruel points. They varied in size, some thick and brutal, others slender and wickedly sharp. Beside them lay a heavy wooden mallet, its surface smooth from use, an inverted cross crudely carved into its head, a flagrant symbol of blasphemy. Finally, a single large glass bottle, filled with a murky, viscous liquid, completed the horrific tableau. Its faded label bore a Latin inscription that sent a cold ripple down my spine. Though my Latin was poor, one word stood out with dreadful clarity: animus, soul. That night, sleep eluded me. Outside, the storm raged on, the wind howling like tormented spirits clawing at the walls of my cottage. The image of the open box, its dreadful contents illuminated by flickering candlelight, burned in my mind. A creeping dread spread through the room, as though the very wood and stone of the cottage had absorbed its malignant presence. I tried to lose myself in a book, but the words slipped away like water through my fingers. The whispers came next, soft, insidious, curling at the edge of my hearing. At first, I blamed the storm, the creaking of old timbers. But they grew louder, more distinct. They spoke in a tongue I did not consciously know, yet somehow understood in my bones. They spoke of pain, of sacrifice, of liberation, for something ancient and unclean. An irresistible compulsion drew me back to the box. The moonlight now fell full upon it, bathing the contents in a ghastly glow. As my hand hovered over the edge, a voice, low and intimate, slithered into my ear. The tools await their purpose. I recoiled, heart thundering in my chest. I slammed the lid shut, the echo of the impact ringing out in the silence. But the whispers did not cease. They swirled around me, rising in a sinister crescendo. The air thickened, heavy with the stench of decay and a metallic tang, like fresh blood. Behind me the floorboards creaked. I spun, breath caught in my throat. The room was empty, save for the shifting shadows cast by the flickering candlelight. Yet I felt eyes upon me. Cold, predatory, watching from the dark corners where the light could not reach. I backed away, fumbling for the iron poker by the hearth. My foot caught on the edge of the rug and I stumbled, landing hard upon the floor. My hand fell instinctively upon the wooden chest. It was warm. No, alive. A pulse, faint but undeniable, thrummed beneath my fingers. The whispers intensified, a chorus of tormented souls circling closer, suffocating me. Images flared in my mind. The gleaming dagger, the jagged stakes, the weight of the mallet in a bloodied hand. An awful yearning took root, as if the box had sewn it into my very being. I wanted to understand, to wield the tools, to join the ancient ritual. My eyes drifted to the antique mirror on the wall. My reflection stared back, but it was wrong. The eyes were black voids, bottomless and hollow. A twisted grin crept across the spectral face, brimming with malevolent delight. It wasn't me. The voices reached a fever pitch, a maelstrom of agony and dark promises. My hand moved of its own accord, reaching for the clasps once more. The lid creaked open, and the dreadful contents awaited me in the silvered moonlight. They were ready, and to my horror so was I. The scent hit me first, a cloying sweetness mixed with the acrid tang of burnt wood and something else. Something metallic and faintly organic that made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. I'd been called in as a structural engineer, not an exorcist, but the moment I stepped across the threshold of the Blackwood house, I knew this was more than just fire damage. The official report cited faulty wiring in the attic. A swift, contained blaze that had, thankfully, not spread to the neighboring properties. But the visual evidence screamed a different story. The walls of the living room were scorched in bizarre patterns, not the uniform charring you'd expect from flames licking upward. Instead, dark, swirling tendrils climbed the plaster like grotesque vines reaching for the crucifix that still hung precariously on the least damaged section of the wall. I ran a gloved hand over the soot-stained surface. It felt strangely slick, almost damp, despite the dry air. My flashlight beam danced across the room, illuminating details the daytime photos hadn't captured. There were scratch marks, deep gouges in the plaster that looked less like accidental damage and more like something with claws had desperately tried to escape. Mr. Davies? A uniformed officer stood hesitantly in the doorway, his face pale. Everything all right in here? Just taking it in, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. The fire seems to have behaved unusually. He nodded, his eyes darting nervously around the room. Yeah, that's what the fire marshal said too. No clear point of origin, and the burn patterns, they're all over the place. I spent the next hour meticulously documenting the damage, taking measurements and samples, trying to find a logical explanation for the unsettling scene. But the more I looked, the less sense it made. The intensity of the burning seemed focused in areas with no obvious fuel source. The air in the room felt heavy, oppressive, a stark contrast to the fresh spring breeze outside. As dusk settled, casting long, eerie shadows through the boarded-up windows, a distinct chill permeated the air. It wasn't the normal drop in temperature that comes with nightfall. This was a cold that seemed to emanate from the very walls, seeping into my bones. My flashlight flickered, and I cursed under my breath, fumbling for the spare batteries in my bag. That's when I heard it, a faint scratching sound high up on the wall near the crucifix. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The officer had left hours ago, and I was supposed to be alone. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely a whisper. Silence. I held my breath, straining my ears. The scratching came again, frantic, insistent, like tiny claws scraping against stone. My flashlight beam danced erratically as I tried to locate the source. It seemed to be coming from behind the wall, a hollow, echoing sound. Then the crucifix began to sway. It was a slow, deliberate movement, not caused by a draft. The metal chain groaned softly as the wooden cross shifted back and forth, casting distorted shadows on the soot-covered wall. My rational mind screamed for a logical explanation, settling foundations, a hidden breeze, but my gut churned with primal fear. The scratching intensified, growing louder, more desperate. It was accompanied by a low, guttural moan, a sound that seemed to vibrate through the very floorboards beneath my feet. The air grew colder, and the metallic scent became overpowering, making my stomach clench. I backed away slowly, my flashlight beam fixed on the swaying crucifix. The shadows around it seemed to deepen, coalescing into vaguely humanoid shapes that writhed and twisted in the periphery of my vision. Suddenly the scratching stopped. The moan faded to a low, almost inaudible whisper. The crucifix hung still. For a moment, there was only silence, heavy and suffocating. I told myself it was my imagination, stress, the lingering smell of smoke playing tricks on my senses. Then a new sound emerged, a soft, wet dragging noise from the corner of the room shrouded in shadow. My breath hitched in my throat. I raised my flashlight, my hand trembling. The beam landed on a patch of wall where the soot seemed to have been wiped away. And there, etched into the plaster, were 3 deep, parallel lines, as if something with long, sharp claws had raked across the surface. Below them, something was moving. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, a dark, viscous liquid began to seep from the wall, tracing a path down the plaster. It wasn't water, it was thick and black like congealed blood. The metallic scent intensified, and the organic undertone became sickeningly sweet. Panic seized me. My carefully constructed wall of logic crumbled. This wasn't a structural issue. This was something else, something ancient and malevolent. The dragging sound grew louder, closer. I could hear wet, rasping breaths. The shadows in the corner seemed to writhe with a life of their own. I wanted to run, to scream, but my feet felt rooted to the floor. My flashlight beam shook violently as I tried to pierce the darkness. And then I saw it. Just a glimpse, a fleeting impression in the shifting shadows. A pale, elongated hand, its fingers tipped with sharp, black claws, reaching out from the wall. It was followed by a sliver of something pale and slick, like wet skin. The whisper intensified, a sibilant sound that seemed to slither directly into my mind, filling it with images of pain and despair. I felt cold dread seep into my soul, a certainty that I was in the presence of something truly evil. The hand moved again, its movements jerky and unnatural. It reached toward the crucifix, its black claws scraping against the wall. I finally found my voice, a strangled gasp that echoed in the oppressive silence. I stumbled backward, knocking over a pile of charred debris. The noise seemed to startle whatever was emerging from the wall. The dragging sound stopped. The whispering ceased. The pale hand retreated slightly. I scrambled to my feet, my mind racing. The crucifix. It was the only thing that hadn't been completely consumed by the darkness. The only point of light in this suffocating gloom. Without thinking, I lunged forward and grabbed the base of the crucifix. The wood felt strangely cold, almost clammy beneath my fingers. As my hand closed around it, a jolt of sharp, intense energy shot up my arm. The air in the room crackled. The shadows recoiled. The pale hand hissed, a sound like air escaping a punctured lung. The black liquid oozing from the wall began to recede. The metallic scent lessened, replaced by a faint smell of ozone. The whispering returned, but this time it was different. Not a sound of malice, but of pain, a terrible, wounded anguish. I held the crucifix tighter, my knuckles white. I didn't understand what was happening, but I knew instinctively that this small wooden cross held some kind of power here. Slowly, the darkness in the corner began to dissipate. The pale hand vanished back into the wall. The dragging sound faded away. The whispering became a faint, mournful sigh, and then silence. The oppressive cold lifted, replaced by the normal chill of night. The air felt lighter, less suffocating. The metallic scent was almost gone. I stood there, trembling, clutching the crucifix, my flashlight beam illuminating the scarred and silent room. The only evidence of what had just transpired was the lingering chill in the air and the 3 deep claw marks etched into the wall. I didn't stay in the Blackwood house that night. I locked up and left, the crucifix clutched tightly in my hand. I couldn't explain what I had seen, what I had felt. My rational mind struggled to reconcile the events with the laws of physics and the natural world. But I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that the fire in the Blackwood house hadn't been caused by faulty wiring. It had been a manifestation of something dark and ancient, something that had been disturbed, and something the simple wooden cross had somehow held at bay. I never went back to the Blackwood house. I submitted my report, citing extensive and inexplicable structural damage. The insurance company probably thought I was crazy. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind howls outside my window, I can still smell that cloying sweetness, that metallic tang. And I clutched the small wooden crucifix I now keep by my bedside, remembering the pale hand reaching out from the shadows, and the desperate, I've never believed in omens, at least not until that night. You see, I was always a man of the material world, skeptical to a fault, raised on logic, tempered by life's practical cruelties. But that road, that cursed, gleaming black ribbon through the bones of the forest, it taught me otherwise. It taught me fear in its purest form. It started with a detour. My usual route home was closed for construction, the workers forced to abandon the site after a storm earlier in the day. They said the rain had swollen the creek and undermined the bridge. I remember the flagger's face pale in the glow of my headlights as he redirected me. "Take Ashwood Lane," he said, but there was something brittle in his voice, like he hated saying it. I should have turned back. The road to Ashwood Lane wasn't on any of my maps. It emerged from the mist like it had never been there before, slick with rain, reflecting my headlights as though it were made of black glass. Streetlights lined it, oddly modern, standing like sentinels against the tangled silhouettes of towering, leafless trees. I couldn't shake the feeling that they were too evenly spaced, too deliberate. The moment I turned onto that road, my radio fizzled into static. At first I thought nothing of it. Bad reception in the woods is expected. But the static wasn't random. It pulsed, almost rhythmic, like the rasping breath of some unseen thing pacing beside me. I turned the dial in frustration, but no station would come through. Only that unnatural cadence. The mist thickened. I eased off the accelerator. The tires hissed on the wet pavement, the only other sound in the oppressive hush. Even my wipers seemed too loud, like they were intruding on something ancient and waiting. Then I noticed the trees. Their branches, stark against the swollen moon, weren't just twisted. They seemed to reach toward the road. Like hands. Black, skeletal hands clawing at the mist. And the streetlights, they flickered. Not in a mechanical, failing power way. No. They flickered in sequence. First one, then the next, as if something unseen were passing beneath them, disturbing the light. I swallowed hard, my throat dry despite the damp air. "Just a storm," I muttered, trying to steady myself. But storms don't make the road behind you vanish. I glanced in the rearview mirror and felt my stomach twist into a cold knot. Where there should have been the entrance to Ashwood Lane, there was only more of the same, endless, glistening black road, wreathed in mist and shadow. No turn-offs. No landmarks. No way back. A chill crept up my spine, prickling the hair on the back of my neck. I pressed harder on the gas, the engine growling in protest. Faster. I just needed to find an exit. Any exit. Minutes dragged by, or maybe it was hours. Time felt slippery, unreliable. The moon never shifted. The streetlights went on flickering. And then I saw them. Figures. At first, they were just shadows at the edge of the light, indistinct, blending with the trees. But as I sped closer, they stepped forward. Pale. Gaunt. Eyes like hollow sockets burned into their faces. Their mouths hung open as if screaming soundlessly, their black tongues lolling. My blood iced over. I swerved, tires screeching, and barely missed one of them as it reached a clawed hand toward my windshield. Its nails scraped the glass, leaving a trail of frost in their wake. The car fishtailed, but I wrestled it straight, breath sawing in and out of my lungs. They didn't chase me. They didn't need to. They were waiting. Further up, more of them appeared beneath the failing streetlights. Dozens, no, hundreds, lining both sides of the road like mourners at a funeral procession. Silent, watching, grinning with teeth black as pitch. I didn't dare stop. I didn't even dare blink. Just as I passed the 10th or 12th figure, the radio crackled back to life. Not music, not voices. A single word, whispered, so soft I thought it was my imagination at first. Turn. My hands trembled on the wheel. Another whisper, louder this time. Turn. But there was nowhere to turn. The road stretched endlessly forward, flanked by that macabre audience. The car's headlights caught something ahead. Movement not of a human shape, but something bigger. Far bigger. At first, it seemed like the mist itself was congealing, thickening into something solid. But as I closed the distance, my heart jackhammering against my ribs, I saw it more clearly. A figure, no, a creature, straddling the road. Its limbs were unnaturally long, jointed in too many places, wrapped in shrouds of shifting shadow. Its head scraped the tops of the tallest trees, and its face, God help me, its face, was a gaping vertical maw lined with teeth like polished bone. And inside that mouth I saw light. Streetlights, moonlight, headlights, swallowed whole. Turn. The voice now blared from the speakers, guttural and furious. I screamed, slamming my foot onto the brake pedal. The tires locked up, the car skidding to a halt inches from the thing's outstretched limb. It pressed a finger as thick as a lamppost against my windshield. The glass frosted over instantly, spiderweb cracks forming beneath its touch. Please, I whispered, breath fogging the frozen interior of the car. Please no. Some part of me, the rational part, knew it was too late. The other part, the part governed by instinct and raw terror, reached for the door handle. Outside, the pale watchers began to move. Their heads lolled from side to side, jaws unhinging wider, emitting a sound that wasn't quite a scream, more like the screech of metal tearing apart. They surged toward the car, their motions jerky and unnatural, like marionettes with tangled strings. Panicked, I threw open the door and bolted. The mist swallowed me whole. I ran blindly, the wet earth sucking at my shoes, skeletal branches clawing at my clothes. I could hear them behind me, gaining ground with impossible speed. Their laughter, if you could call it that, was like the grinding of stones in a tomb. I don't know how long I ran. Eventually, the mist thinned, and I stumbled onto another stretch of the road. But this time it felt different. Familiar. My car was gone. So were the watchers. I stood there, chest heaving, my pulse thudding in my ears until I realized the truth. I was back at the beginning. The same stretch of Ashwood Lane, the same gleaming black pavement, the same flickering lamps standing vigil beneath the twisted silhouettes of barren trees. But the entrance behind me? Gone. Only more road. More fog. And then, the radio faintly from nowhere and everywhere at once. Turn. It whispered. Turn. But there is nowhere to turn. Not anymore. And that concludes this week's chilling journey into the unknown. We hope these tales have left you looking over your shoulder and questioning the darkness around you. Craving more horror? Subscribe to our YouTube channel for even more terrifying tales. Until next time, remember, there are always more nightmares waiting to be told.